Now we're going to work on our inner border corner block. You'll need to stitch 4 of these for your quilt. The supplies you'll need are your hooped battleizer. We already have step 1 stitched on our battleizer. You'll need your threads A with a matching bobbin, thread B with a matching bobbin, thread C with a matching bobbin, and thread D with a matching bobbin. We will need our prepared strip sets that we've already checked the size on to make sure they fit. You'll need fabric 3 to go around the edges of your block. You'll need some backing fabric. You will also need Wonder Tape and water-soluble thread. Let's get started. Time to talk about our strip sets before we stitch our block. You need 3 different strip sets to do your 4 corner blocks. The first one is strip set 1, and we'll just check our size real quickly. You'll need fabrics 3, 2, and 3 seam together for that. And we want to make sure it fits, so we fold it in half and check our seam lines. Strip set 2, you'll need fabrics 3, 2, 4, 2, and 3 pieced together. And that will go in that second area, and we can check our size. And then the last strip set is strip set 3. You'll need fabrics 2, 4, and 2 stitched together, and that will go in that third area. Again, we'll check our size. Everything fits. Let's take it to the sewing machine. Before we get started, let's discuss which direction to press your seam allowances on your strip sets. On strip set 1, we're going to press your seam allowances toward the center. On strip set 2, press your seam allowances away from the center. And on strip set 3, toward the center. That way when you sew all your blocks or your strip sets onto your blocks, all of your seams will oppose each other and lock in nicely. So we've already stitched step 1 onto our battleizer. We're ready to do step 2. And step 2, we place strip set 1 in this area right here. To help hold strip set 1 in place, we will cut a small piece of Wonder Tape and place it where strip set 1 will be set. Peel off the paper back. Then we want to make sure strip set 1 is 1/4 inch past that stitching line on the battleizer, and we also want to line up the seam lines with the placement line on the battleizer. So align all of those markings, your seam lines, and make sure you have your seam allowance. You can turn the strip set back because you want to be sure it's set square, and check your seam lines with the battleizer markings there as well. Once you get it placed where you'd like it to be, you can place it on your sewing machine and the machine will stitch a tack down stitch. So here we have our tack down stitch for step number 2. We're just going to trim up our fabric a little bit, leaving a scant 1/4 inch on all 3 of those edges. Then for step number 4, we need to take a small piece of fabric 3 and place it into that corner edge. So we'll put it right sides together, raw edges even, and we'll put it back under the machine and let it stitch a seam. So here's our seam from step 3. For step 4, we're going to flip our fabric right side up, smooth it out, put the fabric back under the sewing machine, and let it stitch a tack down stitch. So here's our tack down from step 4. We're going to go ahead and trim the fabric, leaving about a scant 1/4 inch. And now we're ready to place strip set 2 for step number 5. So to hold it in place, we'll use Wonder Tape again. Place the Wonder Tape on the seam allowance from strip set 1 in the center. Peel off the paper backing. And then we can place strip set 2 right sides to strip set 1. And make sure you extend your 1/4 inch seam allowance. And slide to lock your strip sets in place, aligning your seams from strip set 2 with the placement stitches on the battleizer. So now that we have that in place, we can go ahead and put it under the machine and stitch the seam. So there's the seam for step number 5. We're going to fold our strip set 2 over and finger press, and you can see our seams align up beautifully. So now we're ready to tack this down, and to hold it in place we're going to use this time 2 pieces of Wonder Tape. We're going to place it where the strip set will end up over the seam lines, a small piece on either end of the strip set. Then we'll peel off the paper backing. And then when we fold our strip set over, finger press it again, and turn it back and make sure your seams align with the placement stitches on the battleizer. This is very important for your quilting to line up properly. So once you're happy with the placement, we can go ahead and put it back in the sewing machine, and your machine will stitch a tack down. So you can see we're going to now trim our tack down stitches. Trim off the little tails on the end. And then we're ready to place our strip set number 3. This is step number 7 in the instructions. And to hold it in place, we're going to put 2 pieces of Wonder Tape, one where each seam will match up at each end of the strip set. These Wonder Tape pieces will go in the seam allowance only, and we'll peel off the paper backing. And then we'll take our strip set number 3 and we'll place it right side to our strip set number 2. Make sure you have a 1/4 inch extending over for your seam allowance, and slide and lock it into place. And then be sure your seams line up with the stitching on the battleizer. And once you're happy with the placement, you can put it back in the machine, and the machine will stitch a seam. So here's our seam from step 7. We will flip our last strip set over right side up and give it a finger press, and our seams look pretty good. And to hold this down for our tack down, we're going to place one last piece of Wonder Tape in the corner and peel off the paper backing. And when you flip your strip set back over again, you want to make sure that it's laying nice and square and flat. You'll use wash away thread in your needle and let your sewing machine stitch the tack down. So here's our tack down stitch from step number 8. We're going to go ahead and trim off the excess. Leave about a 1/2 inch on the outside of your block. And now we're ready to change our thread to a neutral thread. And for step 9, we're going to take fabric 3 and put it right side to our piece section, raw edges even, and put it back in the machine and let it stitch a seam. Here's our seam from step 9. We're going to fold it over right side up, flip it and finger press it. For step 10, we're putting wash away thread in the needle only, and we will stitch the tack down stitch. So here's our tack down from step 10. We will go ahead and trim off any excess fabric, leaving at least a 1/2 inch on the outside edge. Next we will change to our neutral thread in the needle and take our last piece of fabric 3 and place it right side to the pieced area, raw edges even, and the machine will stitch our seam. So here's our seam from step 11. We will flip our fabric right side up, smooth it out, finger press it, and for step 12, whoops, we got to clean up a thread. For step 12, we will put wash away thread in the needle only, and we will stitch the tack down stitch to complete the front of this block. Here's our tack down stitch from our last step. We will go ahead and trim away any excess fabric. For step 13, we'll leave wash away in the needle, turn our hoop over, place our block back, right side up, centering over the placement stitches, and go ahead and sew our tack down stitch for the back. For step 14, it's time to put our decorative thread in the needle and the bobbin, and we will stitch a decorative stitch. For step 15, you're going to put thread D in the needle and the bobbin, and you will stitch the beautiful quilting designed and digitized by master quilter Sharon Schomburg. We're now ready for step 16. Place thread C in the needle and the bobbin and stitch more of Sharon's beautiful quilting. Next we will place thread A in the needle and the bobbin, and we will stitch the last of Sharon's beautiful quilting on this block. So here's our corner block all ready to go, and you can see with careful placement of your strip sets, your quilting will line up just beautifully.